Good morning, Virgo. Listen to me. Not the way you half listen when something catches your attention for a moment before the current of the day pulls you elsewhere. The other way. The way you listen when something in the deepest part of you goes very still and very quiet and says, "This one matters. This one matters." There is someone in your life right now, or orbiting the edges of it, present in a way that has not yet fully declared itself, who requires your complete, clear-eyed, fully awake attention. Not the attention you give to things that are obviously dangerous, the harder kind, the attention required for something that does not look dangerous, that has in fact been careful to not look dangerous, that has constructed with a precision that deserves to be recognized for what it is, an appearance so warm, so disarming, so specifically calibrated to what you needed to see, that the construction itself is the most significant thing about it. Constructed warmth is not warmth. And the difference between the two, the specific, located, learnable difference, is what I came here tonight to help you find. In the old symbolic language of the soul's cartography, there is a figure that appears at the crossroads of certain readings with an insistence that cannot be ignored. Not the devil, with his obvious darkness, not the tower, with its unmistakable drama. Something subtler and in many ways more dangerous than either the moon in its deceptive phase, the light that is borrowed, not generated, the illumination that makes the landscape visible but renders it in a quality of light that is not entirely honest, that softens certain edges, deepens certain shadows, makes the familiar look slightly different from how it appears in the full, unsparing clarity of noon. The moon does not lie. It simply does not show everything. And what it chooses not to show is almost always the most important thing. There is something being withheld from you by this person, deliberately, consistently, with the practiced ease of someone who has done this before, who knows exactly how much to reveal and exactly how much to keep in the shadow, because the shadow is where the thing lives that would change everything if you could see it clearly. I want to speak to how this person makes you feel, because that is where the reading lives most honestly. Not in the abstract analysis of their behavior, but in the specific bodily, often overridden experience of being in their presence or in their orbit. Because your body has been sending signals, has been registering something that the mind, for reasons worth examining, has been choosing to reinterpret as something less alarming than what it actually is. A tension that arrives before you can explain it. A quality of alertness, not the pleasant alertness of excitement, but the sharper kind, the kind that lives closer to the animal part of the nervous system that evolved specifically to detect threat. A subtle wrongness in certain moments that you filed away rather than investigated, because investigating it would have required confronting something you were not yet ready to confront. Soft sigh. The body does not file false reports. It may file incomplete ones, may register danger without being able to specify its source, may sound the alarm without providing the evidence that the rational mind requires before it will act. But the alarm itself is real. And the habit of overriding it, of explaining it away, of constructing elaborate and generous interpretations of the moments that produced, it is one of the most common and most costly habits available to a person who leads with their heart the way you do. You lead with your heart. That is one of the most genuine and most beautiful things about you. It is also, in the specific situation I am reading tonight, the quality that this person may have identified and oriented themselves toward. Because people who lead with their hearts are extraordinary to encounter, warm, open, willing to extend the benefit of the doubt, willing to believe in the best version of another person, even when the evidence for that version is thinner than it should be. And certain people, not all people, not most people, but a specific kind of person recognize that quality and treat it not as something to be honored, but as something to be used. I want to be careful here. Not because the truth requires softening, but because the truth requires precision. What I am not saying is that every person who has ever disappointed you or hurt you belongs to this category. Most people who cause pain do so unconsciously through their own wounds and their own limitations, without malice and without the specific quality of deliberateness that I am feeling in this particular energy. What I am saying is that this person, the one your energy is connected to tonight, the one whose presence produced the alarm your body has been sending, may belong to a different category. The category of those who know exactly what they are doing. Knowing what they are doing looks specific. It looks like an attentiveness that seems on the surface like genuine care, but that examined more closely reveals itself to be primarily informational. A gathering of data about what you respond to, what you need, what your vulnerabilities are, what your history is, what would make you trust more deeply and lower your guard more completely. It looks like saying the right things with a consistency that eventually feels less like authenticity and more like rehearsal, like words that have been selected for their effect rather than because they are true. It looks like the relationship always somehow moving in the direction that serves them, even when the movement is framed in the language of what is good for you. You have felt this in small ways that you talked yourself out of, in moments that seemed minor but left a residue you could not entirely dissolve. In the specific exhaustion that follows certain interactions, not the good exhaustion of something emotionally real and mutually demanding, but the draining kind, the kind that takes more than it gives and leaves you somehow less than you were before the exchange. That exhaustion is information, one of the most reliable pieces of information available. Now, I need to speak about what being careful actually means in this context, because careful is a word that can be misunderstood in two directions. It does not mean paranoid. It does not mean the permanent, armored, closed against everything posture of someone who has decided that people are fundamentally untrustworthy. That posture costs too much and protects against too little. What it means, the specific quality of attention that this moment is calling for, is discernment. The patient, clear-eyed, evidence-based practice of watching what people do rather than only hearing what they say, of noticing patterns rather than isolated incidents, of allowing the full picture to form before deciding what the picture shows. Watch the patterns. Not the grand gestures, those are easy to manufacture and easy to remember. the small, repeated, often unremarkable moments that do not try to impress but simply reveal. The consistency or inconsistency between what is said in one context and what is done in another. The way they behave toward people who have nothing to offer them, toward people from whom no advantage can be extracted, because that behavior, more than any other, shows you who someone actually is when the performance is not required. The way they handle being told no. The way they respond to a boundary, whether they receive it with the natural, uncomplicated acceptance of someone who genuinely respects you, or whether something shifts in them, some quality of warmth cools slightly, some pressure increases in ways that are subtle but unmistakable to someone paying full attention. Pay full attention. That is the specific thing being asked of you right now. Not suspicion, not withdrawal, not the preemptive closing of a heart that has not yet been given sufficient reason to close. Full, clear, undefensive attention. The kind that is capable of seeing both what is genuinely good in a person and what is not, that does not need to choose between the two, that can hold the complexity of a human being who may have real qualities alongside genuinely problematic ones without the discomfort of that complexity pushing you toward a premature resolution in either direction. Because premature resolution is one of the risks of this moment. The discomfort of uncertainty, of not yet knowing what someone truly is, can push us toward conclusions before the evidence is complete. Sometimes toward excessive trust, because trust is more comfortable than vigilance. Sometimes toward excessive closure, because rejection is more comfortable than the exposure of continued openness. Neither premature direction serves you right now. What serves you is the specific courage of staying in the not yet knowing long enough for the truth to reveal itself without your assistance. Soft sigh. Truth reveals itself, always, eventually, with an inevitability that makes the patience required to wait for it the most powerful tool available. People cannot sustain a constructed version of themselves indefinitely. The construction requires effort, and effort has its limits, and at the limits, in the moments of tiredness, of frustration, of circumstances that were not anticipated by the performance, the real thing shows through. Sometimes in a flash so brief it is easy to dismiss, sometimes in a sustained crack that runs through the carefully maintained surface and shows what is underneath with a clarity that cannot be unseen. You are watching for those cracks. You may have already seen one or two and chosen not to name what they showed. Name them now. Not to condemn, not to close, but to see clearly with the full dignity of someone who deserves accurate information about the people they allow into their life. I also want to speak to the emotional dimension of this, because danger of this particular kind does not only threaten the practical circumstances of a life, it threatens something more intimate and more difficult to repair, the internal sense of one's own perception, the trust in one's own reading of situations and people. When someone has been carefully constructed to circumvent your discernment, the discovery that the construction was successful produces a specific kind of damage, not the clean damage of an obvious wound, but the more complicated damage of self-doubt. The wondering whether you can trust what you see, the questioning of an instinct that was actually accurate but was overridden so many times by the performance that it began to seem unreliable. Your instinct is not unreliable. It has been accurate. It has been sending the right signals. The issue has never been with the instrument. It has been with the decision to override the instrument in favor of a more comfortable reading. That decision is understandable. It is human. It is what most people do when the comfortable reading and the accurate reading come into conflict. And the comfortable one is more aligned with what they want to be true. But the comfortable reading is not serving you. And the moment of choosing the accurate one, of finally, with full awareness and full self-possession, deciding to trust what you have been feeling over what you have been told, may be one of the most significant decisions available to you in this chapter. Here is what I want you to carry out of this reading. Not fear. Fear is not a useful tool for this situation. It blurs the vision rather than sharpening it, produces reactive decisions rather than clear ones, and gives the thing you are navigating more power than it deserves. What I want you to carry is clarity. The cold, clean, completely neutral clarity of someone who has decided to see what is actually there rather than what they were shown. Who has given themselves permission to trust the alarm without needing to justify it to anyone? Who understands that protecting their own energy, their own peace, their own carefully constructed life from something that means it harm is not an act of aggression or paranoia. It is an act of the most fundamental self-respect. You are allowed to protect yourself from the subtle and the obvious alike, from the thing that wears warmth as a strategy and intention as a costume, from the specific and recognizable pattern of someone who gives in order to take, who draws close in order to extract, who offers precisely enough to maintain access without ever offering the one thing that would make the offering real, genuine, unconditional, entirely non-strategic care for the person in front of them. Genuine care does not calculate, does not optimize, does not adjust itself in real time to produce the desired effect. It simply is present, consistent, comfortable in its own expression, unbothered by whether it is being received as intended, because it has no agenda beyond the expression itself. That is the standard. And anything that falls consistently, demonstrably, across multiple contexts and multiple moments short of that standard, regardless of how it is explained, regardless of the generous interpretation available, deserves to be held at the distance that the evidence recommends. You are not required to be the most generous interpreter of people who have not earned that generosity. You are not required to extend the benefit of the doubt past the point where the doubt has accumulated sufficient weight to become a verdict. You are not required to remain open to someone whose openness toward you has been, from the beginning, a performance rather than a reality. What you are required to do, the only thing tonight that genuinely matters, is to see clearly, to let what you have been sensing rise fully into conscious awareness without immediately reaching for the explanation that makes it less alarming. To trust the animal part of yourself that has been sending signals your more generous, more hopeful, more people-oriented, conscious mind has been overriding. That part of you is not wrong. It has never been wrong about this. And the protection it is offering you right now, the simple, instinctive, entirely accurate protection of a self that knows it is in the presence of something that does not mean it well, is the most valuable thing available to you in this moment. Take it with both hands, with the full confidence of someone who has decided that their own safety and their own peace are worth more than the discomfort of acting on what they know, with the quiet, firm, completely unspectacular dignity of a person who has simply seen clearly and chosen on the basis of what they saw to protect what matters. Whew. You are not in this alone. The clarity is available. The protection is available. And the version of your life that exists on the other side of having made this choice cleaner, lighter, more honest, more genuinely safe is available too. Walk toward it. One clear-eyed, fully awake, completely self-possessed step at a time. If this reached you tonight, if something here named what you have been feeling and could not give yourself permission to trust, stay close, subscribe, and come back, because what is protecting you in this reading is the same thing that will guide you through everything that comes next. Your own truth. Finally, fully heard.